As the year went by, Alonso was bringing in 65,000 iSkys. But I do not want any of that. I only want two things, your like and your comment, and now that I have already sent this message here, let us move straight to the video, which will be yet another iSky. The hero of this story is named Suzuki. He is an ordinary programmer, living a busy and not glamorous routine at all, even though he was nicknamed by others as king of all professions. Proving that he actually deserves this title is a completely different matter. Just like many people out there, he surrendered himself to the rhythm of the market and ended up having to work even on weekends. And everything became even harder when a colleague of his, unable to endure the pressure, took a leave of absence. The result? All of that workload was left for Suzuki to handle. All the tasks left behind fell on him. And in the middle of this rush, another colleague appeared suddenly, bringing feedback from a client. They wanted a World War game to be more accessible for beginners, even though previously they had requested the exact opposite, saying they wanted something hard in order to attract more hardcore players. Suzuki felt the urge to explode, but he took a deep breath and suggested a creative solution. The idea was that after creating their character, the players would receive an item to scan, the map, and also 3 bombs to clear everything in their path, and whoever managed to complete the challenge without using those items would still obtain the rare achievement. The proposal ended up pleasing everyone, and their colleague, a little more relaxed, asked Suzuki to implement the changes. But since he was already busy fixing an annoying bug in a mobile game, he asked that colleague to renegotiate the deadline with the client, and at lunchtime, while eating his meal, Suzuki heard the cries of a child. Looking around and seeing nobody else nearby, he decided to go to her and ask what had happened. The little girl was lost, so he decided to accompany her to the police station. But before he could do so, her mother appeared and Suzuki felt extremely relieved. The best part of everything was that she did not suspect anything of him. Then, back at the company, he kept going firmly, solving bugs until nightfall. Meanwhile, another colleague who had already been there for 3 days asked to go home, since if he stayed away any longer, his wife would ask for divorce, while Suzuki, at 29 years of age, had never had a girlfriend. But he pretended that it did not matter and dedicated himself completely to his work, surrendering fully to capitalism. Yet 3 days passed and Suzuki's eyes already looked like those of a panda, so deep and dark they were. When it seemed everything was finally finished, he received a notification from the testing team, and it was another problem. The storage system of the game he was managing had a serious bug, and worse, it was a flaw that allowed duplication of items, something really complicated to fix. While he was trying to solve that bomb, he received an email from the chubby colleague saying that another client now wanted to eliminate the storage limit in the second game. Even frustrated, Suzuki swallowed the irritation and continued with his task, determined to deliver everything. And after enormous effort, he completed the job within the deadline and went to take a nap since he had been over 30 hours straight. As soon as he fell asleep, Suzuki awoke in a completely different place. Clearly, it was no longer Earth, and his phone had no signal, and upon seeing himself in the reflection, he realized he looked like he did back when he was still a student. The scenery around him seemed to be a mixture of 2 games he had worked on in the last days, and the name he was using there was Suzuki, practically the same as the one he used when testing the game. A few minutes later, he heard many footsteps approaching, and using his new abilities, he noticed he had access to 3 activations of Meteor Rain and map scanning. Curiously, they were exactly the resources he himself had invented to make the life of a new player easier. When he scanned the map, everything turned red, and every dot marked the presence of an enemy, and in total there were 300 adversaries, all of them at level 50, while Suzuki was still at level 1 and had no chance of winning in direct combat. So he decided to hide, but even so the enemies still managed to find him and cause damage, and in that moment he began doubting if all that was really a dream. So to try to escape from that trap, he decided to use Meteor Rain, but nothing happened. Unfortunately, it seemed that this dream was somewhat bugged, so he tried 2 more times and nothing happened either. But suddenly hundreds of meteors fell with full force, destroying every one of the serpent soldiers in the way, and with that Suzuki began to gain tons of experience by defeating all of them at once. When everything stopped, the field around was completely destroyed, yet 1 soldier had escaped because he was too far away to be hit. For some strange reason, that enemy threw a sword to Suzuki, wanting to fight in a fair way. Suzuki was completely lost since he had absolutely no notion of fencing, but because the enemy was already almost dying due to the meteor rain, he threw sand into his face and then used the enemy's own sword, managing to finish him successfully. After that intense sequence, Suzuki thought that all of it was extremely heavy, even if it were only a dream, so he tried to find a way to get out of that place, but he could not. He learned the ability of self-healing, and the previous wounds disappeared. Besides that, he went from level 1 to level 310 with all of his status points at the maximum, and Suzuki could activate the Meteor Rain skill again with only one click. Yet worried about the excessive and truly overwhelming use of mana, Suzuki began to run another test. The results showed that the impact area and destructive power of that magic were gigantic, even when he cast it from far away. Luckily, as his level increased, Suzuki also improved his physical resistance, which allowed him to come out unharmed from the wave of impact provoked by the explosion. Realizing that he could be seen as a villain if he abused such magic, Suzuki chose to keep it deactivated, reserving it only for a true emergency. After that, he checked the inventory and found a small water bottle. He tried it and found it's super refreshing, besides seeming like the quantity of water inside would never end. He had also managed to earn a good amount of money by defeating those lizard-like monsters. And continuing to explore the inventory, he found a cloak and decided to put it on immediately. During the night, Suzuki spent his time perfecting his combat techniques. He did not want to go through another complicated situation like the one he had faced that day, and at dawn, Suzuki decided to head toward a point on the map called the Soldiers' Fortress. He crossed mountains and then went through several forests, and after repeating this path for a few days, he finally arrived at the marked place. When opening the map to orient himself, he accidentally noticed there were over 100 soldiers in the surroundings. And besides that, he also detected the presence of an enormous serpent. Trying to get a better view, he decided to leap, but that was when Ivern suddenly appeared and collided directly with him. Despite the impact, Suzuki was not hurt because of his high level, and right after, he grabbed a stone and hurled it against Ivern, hitting the creature's wing and making a huge hole. Wounded, the beast ended up fleeing, but unfortunately going in the direction of the soldiers Suzuki had seen before. Believing himself responsible, he ran after to understand what was going on, and there he saw the soldiers battling against Ivern and trying to defeat him together. Since he did not understand the local language, he decided to improve the translation system, which allowed him to capture what the commander was coordinating with the soldiers through clear orders. Even so, the arrow attacks had no effect because the dragon scales were far too resistant. They even managed to bring Ivern down and cause some damage, but it was not enough to really injure the creature, and that was when the commander asked Xena to try restraining the monster with magic. But the spell ricocheted and struck her, instead making her be carried away. And without thinking twice, Suzuki jumped into the air and made a heroic rescue of the girl. When Xena woke up, she went into despair upon realizing she was at a gigantic height, and seeing this, Suzuki leapt even higher to escape from there safely, which left her astonished. As soon as they reached a calm place, Xena thanked him a lot for being saved, and from her reaction, Suzuki thought that if he were still in high school, he would already be completely captivated by her. Introducing himself, he used the name Suzuki, and Xena, with a certain charm, also spoke her own name, reinforcing that she was still single. While they were talking, an arrow passed, grazing Suzuki's face. The one who had fired a stone was actually Xena's partner. Believing she had been kidnapped, Xena tried to calm the situation, while Suzuki attempted to explain that he was merely a merchant, but the group still remained suspicious since he had very few items with him. So Suzuki invented the story that his carriage had fled after a meteor rain. Yet the girls did not swallow that excuse, because if it were true, he should have gone in the opposite direction. Then Suzuki said that he was visiting the grave of an old friend of his father that was precisely at the Soldiers' Fortress, and that on the way he had been surprised by the meteor rain and tried to run after the carriage but could not manage. Even with all of this, they were still suspicious and asked for his documents. Suzuki invented that he had left everything in the pocket of the coat that was inside the carriage, thanks to his persuasion and bluffing abilities he possessed. The group decided to drop the matter, allowing him to enter the city in order to issue new documents. Soon after, he saw some soldiers in the distance collecting parts of Ivern, and according to the Xenas, the armors and cloaks made from the creature's skin were extremely resistant and had been sold for a high price. but Ivern's meat was horrible, and only the people from the western lands and the slaves could eat it here. With not much else to do, Suzuki took the chance to analyze the city of Salu, and he ended up discovering that 80% of the population there were civilians, while the other 20% were mostly enslaved, and they were not only humans. Among them there were also elves and demons living as slaves. After finishing that analysis, the group finally reached the city gates, and Xena asked if Suzuki already had a plan, and he answered that he first wanted to arrange a room. The blonde swordswoman then indicated an inn called Jedi. As soon as they entered the city, Xena needed to pick up a report and said goodbye, but she promised that she would look for him afterward in order to repay him. Later, the one who helped Suzuki to obtain the new documents was Lona. To begin the procedure, the officer asked Suzuki to place his hand on top of a magic stone. He decided to continue using the name that he used for his game characters, and after saying his name, Suzuki, the status panel appeared in front of him. And of course, even being in the new world, he was still the center of attention, the true hidden master, because immediately his data showed that he was only at level 1. The officer was astonished to realize that Suzuki was an adult because he thought he was younger, and that ended up surprising Suzuki as well, since in that world at the age of 15, a person was already considered an adult. To receive the license, Suzuki only had to pay 1 silver coin, and the commercial tax was waived since he had saved Xena's life, being recognized as the local hero. Besides that, they also gave Suzuki the information that he could renew his license in the same office or at the main headquarters of the city, and in case any guard caught him with the permit expired, he would receive a fine of 1 silver coin, and if he had no money, he would be forced to become a slave. After that, he was guided to a point where the inn sign was visible, and there the girl who had helped him said goodbye. Heading toward the inn, Suzuki was fascinated with everything he saw. For a short moment, a girl with a rather voluptuous body, let us say, grabbed his hand and tried in every way to take him to her guest house. Realizing that he was a newcomer there, using his analysis ability, Suzuki realized that she was only 13 years old, which left him very shocked since her appearance was very mature. By coincidence, the inn she led him to was exactly the same one Xena had indicated, and the owner of the place was a rather chubby woman who was also her mother. After he explained that he was without luggage, the proprietress decided to charge him a large coin for the stay and to offer him a free dish of food if he had dinner at the counter. Suzuki accepted immediately and decided to stay there for 10 days, asking what they had to eat since it had been days since he had eaten something decent. As he had already missed the dinner hour, only some old cakes were left, and Suzuki had to accept them. Soon after, the innkeeper asked her daughter Marta to clean the rooms of the cowards from that morning. Finding that nickname strange, Suzuki asked the reason, and according to the woman, when the meteor rain fell, they panicked, thinking that the demon lord was beginning a war against the Valley Dragon. Suzuki was surprised to hear that, since he had no idea that a demon lord existed in that world. The woman commented that it had already been 70 years since the hero defeated that lord, and since then there had been no more signs of his return. Even so, she did not seem worried about the demon lord's return, because if that happened, the attack would begin in the Labyrinth City, a place very far from there. There in Salu City, the problem were the wyverns. And while she spoke about that creature, Suzuki took the opportunity to ask about the dragons. She explained that dragons spend most of their time sleeping and are almost never seen, and the last record of one had been 2 years ago. Long before she was born, a huge black dragon attacked the city and caused massive destruction. Suzuki was going to ask if anyone had died in that attack, but before that, other clients arrived, and the conversation became lively right there while he ate his cake. Then Martha appeared and suggested that he try the cake with pickles, saying that it made the flavor better. Since she was unoccupied, Suzuki took the opportunity to ask where he could buy ready-made clothes. Martha became excited and indicated some well-known tailors of the city, and while listening, Suzuki ended up fixing his gaze on a corner, and since she was still free, Martha offered to take him there. As the two walked calmly, Suzuki noticed something quite heavy. She was being treated cruelly just for being a slave, and no one wanted to get near her. He couldn't just stand by and watch, so he decided to act. A man nearby assumed the girl was Suzuki's property and ordered him to chain her up and leave her in the western part of the city. Instead, Suzuki calmly picked up some logs of wood and handed them to the young slaves to carry. The other slaves were moved by his attitude and made sure to thank him before leaving. Martha was also astonished at the way Suzuki treated the slaves, since, according to her, slaves were not very welcome because many hunters and farmers had been killed by them while trying to sell their products in the city. But Suzuki raised the hypothesis that those crimes might have been committed by thieves or bandits instead. After that, Martha took Suzuki on a tour around the city, showing him several areas. He even took the chance to learn a few bargaining techniques by visiting different stalls. and as a way of showing gratitude he bought her a hairpin. During their walk, Suzuki came across a stall that sold dragon masks, which locals wore during the harvest festival to make wishes for peace. Besides the masks, there were also black clothes and wigs of the hero, while other colors represented his companions or the princesses. In the end, Suzuki couldn't resist the vendor's persuasion and bought 2 items. Later, while walking, he found himself drawn to a young enslaved girl inside a carriage. Even though she was only 11 years old, she was already at level 10 and held 2 rather curious titles, the Burden Girl and the Mad Princess. Afterwards, Suzuki returned and met Yuni, a girl who worked part-time at the inn. As soon as he greeted her, he asked if there was a place where he could take a bath, and Martha explained that there was indeed a public bath in the city, but playbills were not allowed to use it. Normally, she would wash herself in the back of the inn, where there was a well. Setting that matter aside, dinner time arrived, and Suzuki decided to try the meals Martha recommended. Each dish was wonderful, and he enjoyed them so much that he ordered another combo, unable to resist the incredible flavors. After returning to his room, Suzuki reflected on everything that had happened so far, and upon thinking more carefully, he began to realize that the story of the world he was in did not match at all with the game he himself had created. It was too strange to be just any dream. It had the full structure of a game, but without the option to exit or save progress, which only made Suzuki more curious and motivated to explore this world further. He drew up a main plan to explore various places of this world, while finding a way back home became only a secondary goal. Deep down, he believed that the more he discovered, the more it would serve as valuable learning for him to develop games. The next morning, Martha suddenly knocked on his door, saying that his girlfriend was waiting downstairs. Completely confused, since he had no idea he even had a girlfriend, Suzuki went down to see who it was and ended up finding Xena. She told him that she had the day off and wanted to take him on a walk through the city, and Suzuki agreed, not wanting to disappoint her. Right away, Xena led Suzuki to a candy shop, and he politely insisted on paying for her, which left Xena a little embarrassed since she had wanted to repay his help. For Suzuki, though, it was nothing more than natural courtesy. After all, Xena had already helped him get oriented in the city. Besides those sweets, they visited other places to try many different treats. One of them was called fried dragon wings, though in truth they were bat wings. When Xena reached to grab one, Suzuki accidentally bumped into her, staining her blouse, which, as it turned out, was borrowed from her mother. At that moment, a girl appeared and offered to clean the blouse with magic. With no other choice, they agreed and stepped into an alley, where the girl used water magic to remove the stain, not only cleaning Xena's blouse, but also accidentally wetting Suzuki's glasses. Using wind magic, the water dried quickly, and Suzuki turned to her with curiosity. After leaving the alley, he asked Xena how she managed to recite her spells, and when he heard them, he realized how extremely difficult it was to chant such words. In the middle of their conversation, she revealed that she had begun seriously studying magic about 3 years ago, even though her parents had encouraged her since she was very young by making her read books on the subject and study more and more, whether through toys that controlled the flow of magic or songs and poems about it. Xena liked the form she had received and intended one day to be able to fly. As for Suzuki, when he was questioned about why he wanted to learn magic, he said it was because at the inn where he was staying there was no bathroom, so he wanted to avoid bathing outside, and for that he would have to use magic. Xena ended up bursting into laughter at such an unusual explanation. He even received the title of clown, but at the same time he was praised as a true knight for valuing her dream. After walking for a while, they stopped at a stall that sold ointment for external wounds, and Suzuki bought a bottle for the owner of the beekeeping house as a way of thanking her for everything. Afterwards, Xena asked if there was anywhere he wanted to go. He replied that he wished to see the city from above, so Xena took him to the walls where they enjoyed both the breeze and the view of the city from up there. At that moment, Suzuki spotted a giant mill, and Xena explained that in case of wyvern attacks, it could be used as a source of energy. Since Suzuki showed interest, Xena offered to take him there, but before that they decided to stop for a while. Inside, they saw a painting portraying an epic battle between a hero and the Demon King. Xena told him that the sacred sword glowed blue when held by a hero. Curious, Suzuki asked if it would also shine for someone else, and she answered that it could, but only if the sword acknowledged the one holding it. At that moment, Sister Ona appeared, commenting that wielding the sacred sword was not necessarily something good. She explained that only heroes who answered the call of the goddess Palion could stand against the Demon King. Right after that, Sister Ona asked if Xena was dating Suzuki, which left Xena extremely embarrassed and confused, stumbling with her words as she tried to explain. wanting to change the subject immediately, they decided to continue their trip. They rented a carriage, but on the way a stone on the ground caused a jolt to the wheel, making Xena fall right on top of Suzuki, something that in truth had been a setup by the coachman trying to bring the two of them closer. Afterwards, Xena began showing Suzuki how the city's defense system worked, since each tower possessed a magical cannon with absurd destructive power. But one of them had already been destroyed by a dragon 2 years earlier, though fortunately it was only a small-sized dragon, so the damage had been quite limited compared to what had happened 40 years earlier when the external city walls had been completely devastated by a black dragon. The situation now did not even seem so serious. At that point, Suzuki wanted to know whether the Demon King had any connection to that event, and Xena replied that it depended on the nature of those creatures, and that the most dangerous were the Demon Kings who used their intelligence to command demonic tribes, since demons could only be harmed with magic or enchanted items. Soon after, they noticed a crowd surrounding a priest who was giving an inflamed speech about the servants of the Demon King. The priest claimed that the girls there were descendants of those demonic tribes and urged the people to punish them, promising that such an act would bring spiritual rewards. Witnessing that injustice happening before her very eyes, Xena did not think twice and rushed forward to stop it all. Meanwhile, Suzuki, using his appraisal ability, discovered that those girls were not property of the priest at all, and he also noticed the man observing everything from a distance in a highly suspicious way. On top of that, his accomplice was infiltrated in the crowd, inciting the people even further. While protecting the girls, Suzuki quietly neutralized each thug one by one. During that time, another priest from a different temple appeared, standing at Xena's side, which increased even more the tension between the two groups. While the imposter enjoyed the chaos he himself had triggered, Suzuki suddenly appeared, and before the man could even react, he took a precise kick to the stomach. Immediately afterwards, Suzuki dragged him into the middle of the crowd to expose his scheme. The man had borrowed slaves and was deceiving the people by claiming that common stones were sacred relics, all to extract money from them. While the crowd began suspecting that he might have ties to some demonic tribe, the truth came to light, confirming that he really was from a demonic tribe. Suzuki then remembered that upon arriving in the city, he had already detected the presence of a member of such a tribe. As panic spread and everyone ran, the three girls remained paralyzed, because if they acted without their master's command, their collars would suffocate them. But with the master killed by the demon, the curse broke, and that was when Suzuki seized the moment and freed the girls from that control. As for the demon, it suddenly unleashed a powerful dark magic, and when Xena led the soldiers to support Suzuki, they were all pulled into the spell as well. After regaining consciousness, Suzuki found himself inside a cavern together with the three girls. Hearing the monster instigating fear, he declared that he would create monsters with the purpose of eliminating Suzuki's group, using fear as his main tool. As soon as the demon left, Suzuki introduced himself to the three girls, and since they did not have names, he gave one to each of them. The one who resembled a cat became Tama, the one who looked like a dog was called Potty, and the reptilian-looking one became Lisa. Suzuki offered them towels and water so they could clean themselves, and in addition he gave them an ointment to treat their external wounds. Although they hesitated at first, since they had never been treated with such care before, the girls eventually accepted after Suzuki insisted, saying that it was an order. After bathing, they enjoyed the full command, and once they were fed, Suzuki began to analyze the situation. With his abilities, he easily tracked down a route out of the labyrinth, including the location of his soldiers Zeni. However, something bothered him. He could no longer detect the demon Kaolio. That made him stay alert to impossible ambushes. Noticing that Suzuki was about to move on, the girls said they were afraid, but willing to serve as bait if he was willing to lead. Suzuki assured them that he would never do such a thing, and that he was simply evaluating the situation calmly. He then handed a sword to Lisa, warning her that she should only fight if he gave the order. As they went on, Potty caught the scent of blood, and when they got closer they saw a monster devouring a corpse. Lisa suggested they slip by unnoticed while the beast was distracted, but Suzuki decided to use the situation to train his aim. Quickly raising the level of his shooting skill, he eliminated the monster with precision, and the girls were shocked and curious about that thing which Suzuki explained was a magical weapon, asking them to keep it secret. With the remains of the slain monster, Suzuki crafted a spear and handed it to Lisa. But when he noticed that she was searching for the creature's core, a highly valuable item, She suggested Suzuki keep it for himself since it would be useful. Lisa then returned the sword she had received earlier and gave it to Tama. Next, Suzuki used the weapon to break the chains that still bound the girls, but the noise ended up frightening Tama and Potty. After apologizing to them, he asked that all the girls stay close. Even though they had already faced some monsters up to that point, the girls' levels remained the same. That was when Suzuki had an idea. He ordered Tama to collect some stones, and when they encountered another monster, instead of killing it immediately, he only wounded it. He then instructed Tama to throw the stones and Lisa to pierce it with the spear, and afterwards Suzuki finished the creature with a precise strike. Soon after, Suzuki told Tama and Lisa to hunt down and collect the monster's core, while he and Potty moved forward to repeat the same tactic. This time, however, the girl panicked and fled in despair after throwing some stones. Once he finished what he was doing, Suzuki went after her until he reached the point where the others were waiting. When she calmed down, Potty apologized immediately, but Suzuki was not upset with her for running away. What truly concerned him was the possibility of her dying if she continued panicking like that. From then on, they repeated the plan several times, and with time Tama and Potty reached level 5, while Lisa reached level 6. When he realized that the three were exhausted, Suzuki suggested taking a break and offered them food so they could recover. After that, he told a lighthearted story to help them rest better. However, Lisa refused to sleep, so Suzuki had to change his tone and gave her a direct order to rest while he took the watch. After the rest, they continued their journey and defeated even more monsters. Along the way, they found an old house where they entered and searched for resources. After some time, the three girls managed to kill a monster on their own, and after this achievement, they enjoyed a delicious meal of grilled frogs. When they finished, they bathed together and then went to sleep to regain their strength. As they resumed their travels, they ran into a level 10 slime. Suzuki tried to destroy it with a fireball, but it did not work very well. At that moment, Lisa suggested attacking the creature's core directly, and Tama, while observing the area, noticed that the wall behind the slime looked suspicious. When Suzuki investigated, he discovered a secret passage hidden there. After checking it, a level 40 wolf suddenly appeared and lunged straight at Suzuki, who was the closest. Thinking quickly, he activated a trap behind the wall, causing the beast to fall. Continuing their journey, they then found 3 spider cocoons with people inside Suzuki, so he asked the girls to help free the prisoners. And the first one was a nobleman who thanked them, promising a reward. The second was a merchant, and the third was precisely the young man who had scolded Pote back there. This youth did not want to be touched by her and asked that she only hand him a knife. Witnessing this scene, Suzuki ordered Pote to step aside and not pay him any attention. The nobleman, annoyed by the youth's screams, threatened to fry him right there, not even waiting for the spider monster to return. And right after walking a bit further, 2 girls heard the sounds of battle just ahead. Then Suzuki gathered the 3 close to him and gave instructions on how to fight without disturbing whoever was already fighting. But that same youth from earlier ignored what Suzuki had said and tried to make himself useful, and in the end he failed, unable to defeat even a simple slime, and still had to be rescued by the 2 girls. With the group's help, the soldiers managed to regain control of the situation, but it was very exhausting. Not finding the scene, Suzuki went looking for her and discovered her tied up. As soon as he freed her, he received an emotional embrace. But that tender moment did not last long, for he reminded them that the focus was defeating the demons. When he was questioned by the witch, Suzuki said that he knew the enemy's weaknesses thanks to Lisa. This shook the scene since she liked him but now heard him mentioning another girl, and after all the demons were eliminated, Orna treated the wounded and the atmosphere became lively. It was then discovered that Lisa was actually a beast girl with whom she had spoken earlier at the plaza. While the soldiers passed through the iron gate, the group noticed something strange. When they checked, they realized there was also a secret passage that led exactly to where Suzuki had collapsed earlier. It was precisely at that moment that the soldiers went wild upon finding a treasure chest. But instead of gold and rare artifacts, inside the chest was the one-eyed demon. To face that, the nobleman asked the soldiers for some time while he prepared a spell, but the demon acted fast, using a stone magic to shatter their defenses, and after that cast another one that caused hallucinations. The soldiers began seeing their own comrades as enemies, and Suzuki had to knock everyone out to prevent chaos. Meanwhile, the nobleman finally released the spell in an attempt to destroy the monster, but it did not work. The creature was highly resistant to magic. Observing the situation, Suzuki realized that he was the only one still able to fight, and it was then that the same wolf from before reappeared, eager for battle. Seeing the opportunity, Suzuki let the wolf push him inside that isolated space. There he drew a sacred sword from his inventory and finished the wolf with ease. But since the sword had not yet acknowledged him, he ended up injuring himself when using it. For that reason, he had to put the weapon away and wait until he was accepted by it. Meanwhile, Xenia and the soldiers were still struggling greatly against the demon. In that situation, Suzuki appeared with a completely different appearance thanks to a wig and a mask he had bought at the market. The three girls had already regained consciousness, and even without seeing Suzuki, they were able to identify his scent. So as not to be noticed, he swiftly eliminated the enemy, but realizing his disadvantage, the demon formed a magical summoning circle. Suzuki tried to stop it in time, but the demon had already foreseen such an attempt and restrained him, gaining enough time to call its master. According to it, this master was an extension of the Demon King, and shortly afterward this far more powerful demon chose to merge with the one-eyed demon through absorption. And after that, the demon's power grew even greater. With no alternative, Suzuki once again wielded the sacred sword. And when the enemy saw the blade, it mistook Suzuki for a true hero and began to reinforce its body, rapidly, making itself as resistant as possible. That quickly became a problem for Suzuki, since he was unable to handle the sword properly. He even considered unleashing a meteor shower skill, but realized the place was far too small for that. Even so, he was not alone, and the group did all they could to support him. Although their attacks were not very impactful, their magic still had some effect. Seeing this, Suzuki remembered something Xenia had once said, and then he decided to strengthen his fireball spell. He let go of the sword, took the staff, and released an amplified magic. Suzuki was quite surprised when he noticed that the demon was truly suffering greatly from that spell, which the others thought to be high level, but in fact was only a basic spell. It was in that moment that he remembered an important truth about that world. Only a genuine hero could draw out the full power of a sacred sword. And even while holding the sword, Suzuki did not possess the title of hero. What he had was a close one god slayer, and by uniting his efforts with those of the divine sword, he carried in his inventory the weapon he had used to defeat the demon, who was left without understanding what was happening. After they returned to the ground and saw Suzuki, the three beast girls were radiant, but the mood changed when he answered a soldier, saying that they were not exactly his slaves. Right after, a man appeared and said that someone wanted to speak with Suzuki. When he called the beast girls, they quickly got excited, and then the young Somber appeared, thanked the beast girls, and apologized to Pachai for having kicked her earlier. After Somber left, the scene unfolded with the girls hugging Suzuki, and with the end of the battle he finally received the title of hero. With the help of Lord Nidoran, the three beast girls officially became Suzuki's instead of being freed. Besides handling the documentation, Lord Nidoran also wanted to present some more product. That was when, inside a simple shelter, a fragile girl named Lulu appeared to welcome them. Soon after came Arisa, the same girl Suzuki had met on the street. What caught Suzuki's attention the most was the natural way Arisa said his name. Suspecting something, he whispered the same phrase to both of them, but only Arisa reacted. In Japanese, he commented that there were spiders in their hair. But even so, Suzuki could not bring himself to leave them behind and decided to take them along. From Arisa's personality, it was clear that she was very extroverted, the total opposite of Lulu, who was much more timid and fragile. Curious about the beast girls, Arisa went to talk with Pachai and Tama, quickly getting attached to them and even praising how adorable they were. Seeing this, Lisa also approached to greet the new members, and Suzuki felt satisfied to see that no one there held prejudice against slaves. Soon after entering the city, Lulu's stomach growled with hunger. Noticing this, Suzuki subtly suggested that everyone go eat something. This lit up Pachai and Tama's eyes, while Arisa was enchanted by Suzuki's kindness. Slaves normally only had black bread or, if they were lucky, a bit of hot soup. Lisa's group usually ate only once a day, and when hunger became unbearable, they would eat whatever they found along the road: flowers, herbs, even grass. After hearing this reality, Suzuki offered them a real meal. The girls' eyes sparkled when they saw so much good food in front of them, and even so, they all waited politely for Suzuki's permission before starting to eat. Pachai and Tama were so excited by the new experience that they even forgot to leave leftovers. Arisa could barely handle the overwhelming cuteness from the two, even though the food could not compare to the inn's meals. That kind of meal, however, was exactly what pleased Suzuki. Unlike him, the young slaves were not used to spicy dishes, but Lisa handled that kind of food very well. She even warned the others to slow down and try other options. It was then that Suzuki noticed the girls' clothes were quite worn out. taking the chance to go out and get more food. He also bought them new clothes. Lisa wanted to accompany him, but Suzuki asked her to stay and enjoy the meal with the group. During his walk, he saw a stall selling grilled chicken skewers. Since Lisa had mentioned liking them, he decided to buy some. On his way back home, he spotted a group of hungry beast men and decided to give them the skewers, promising to make it up to Lisa later. When he returned with the new clothes, the girls were super excited, and even Lisa admitted that Suzuki had good taste when it came to choosing outfits. After that, Suzuki took the girls back to the inn. Since the streets were getting crowded, his idea was to get an extra room, but the innkeeper told him all the rooms were already occupied. What made Suzuki most uncomfortable, however, was the cold way the slaves were treated, receiving judgmental looks from all around. Because of this, he decided to set up camp with them, while the two boys stayed in his room. At that moment, Arisa took the initiative, and asking her master to remain calm, she discreetly activated her magic to make people around them more receptive. Their attitudes changed almost immediately, and even the innkeeper remembered that the stable could still be used. Suzuki used his magic to prepare improvised beds for the three slaves and instructed them to scream if anyone tried to break in. He assured them he would rush to help immediately if that happened. When he returned to his room, Lulu tried to help him change, but Suzuki refused, saying it wasn't necessary. The situation grew even more embarrassing when he realized Lulu and Arisa had already removed all their clothes. When he ordered them to get dressed, Arisa was surprised while Lulu began to cry, thinking she hadn't been useful to her master. Seeing this, Suzuki covered Lulu with his coat, and he asked her to keep doing that kind of thing mostly during the night while they were deeply asleep. Suzuki eventually acquired spiritual magic and resistance against it, and when he slowly opened his eyes, he saw Arisa sitting on top of him. Not only was she completely naked, but she also tried to force a kiss on him. If it had not been for his newly acquired resistance, he might have given in and committed a serious mistake. Arisa's reaction upon realizing that he had managed to resist her skills was one of astonishment. To prevent her from causing even more confusion, Suzuki decided to forbid her from using that magic. And at that moment, he understood that it had been Arisa who used the spell on the people at the inn. Besides prohibiting her from using it, he demanded that she deactivate the enchantment cast on the others. But even so, she pretended that she knew nothing. Faced with that, Suzuki took the opportunity to refine his interrogation techniques, making her reveal everything. That was how he discovered that Arisa had already fallen in love with him since their very first meeting. His straight black hair and his innocent demeanor had made her see him as the ideal husband. And now that he was her master, she did not realize that the situation was the opposite, and thus used magic to try to win him over. In reality, Arisa's initial plan was only to sneak into his bed to watch him sleeping. But carried away by her impulses, she ended up going much further. The situation got a little out of control. And after that, Arisa also revealed that she was Japanese just like Suzuki. She had reincarnated in this world, while keeping her memories from her previous life, and upon seeing his black hair, she deduced that he too was someone who had come from Japan. Arisa said that he was the second Japanese person she had met in that world. The first one was not Lulu, but rather one of her distant ancestors. She even added that, if Lulu had been born in Japan, she could have become an idol because of her beauty, since in that world people did not consider her attractive. Returning to the previous conversation, Arisa wanted to know whether Suzuki was a reincarnated person or someone who had been summoned. She explained that reincarnated individuals are those who died in another world and were reborn here, while the summoned ones are forcibly brought with magic. However, neither of those categories fit Suzuki. He had not seen any god, had no contact with any magical summoning circle, and his numerical value was only a basic one without any kind of bonus. But on reflection, he thought that his meteor shower skill was far too disproportionate. Changing the subject, Suzuki then asked why Arisa had ended up as a slave, but the author chose to hide that part of the story for the moment, leaving the revelation for later. The next morning, Martha brought Xena to Suzuki's room to call for him, and both were shocked to see Lulu muttering perverted things in her sleep. To make matters worse, they found Suzuki sleeping beside a girl who was completely naked. At that very moment, Xena shouted, calling him a pervert, and ran off in embarrassment. Arisa warned Suzuki that it would be better for him to go after her, so he hastily changed clothes, jumped out of the window and ran to chase after Xena. When he caught up with her, he held her hand and explained everything, saying it was not at all what it seemed. He declared that he would never purchase slaves with ulterior motives and that Arisa had slipped into his bed after he had already been asleep. Afterward, Suzuki complimented Xena's appearance with affectionate words, and he mentioned a stylish clothing shop he wanted to take her to. Arisa recognized that he managed to resolve the situation in less than 5 minutes, which was truly impressive. As a response, Suzuki gave her a light tap on the forehead, since she was the one who had caused all this confusion, and right after that he asked her to gather the group. He then began recalling everything that had happened the night before. According to Arisa, she had once been a princess, and she had tried to use the knowledge from her previous life to help her kingdom prosper. At first, it brought great success, but over time, things began to collapse. During a crisis when the country was vulnerable, a neighboring kingdom took advantage and invaded. The king and crown prince were publicly executed, and those who survived lost their privileges, ending up reduced to slavery. Yet something unexpected happened. One day, a demon appeared and destroyed both the castle and the capital of the kingdom. Chaos engulfed the land, and Arisa and Lulu ran into the mountains, believing they would be safe there, but they were ultimately ambushed by a slave merchant. Meanwhile, in the present, the girls managed to reunite, except for Lulu, who was not feeling well. Suzuki handed a bag of coins to Arisa and asked her to buy whatever was necessary for everyone. Some beastmen accompanied her to ensure her safety against possible thieves or kidnappers, and to secure everything further, Suzuki authorized Arisa to use magic. Observing the harmony among them, Suzuki felt more at ease and thought that they did not deserve to be treated as slaves. When he was alone with Xena, she asked if he had already planned anything for the day. Suzuki replied that he was thinking about looking for a place to house his companions, wanting to make the most of the moment alongside the one he liked. Xena said she wanted to go with him, and so the two went to the office where they met a broker named Natty. Knowing that Suzuki intended to live with the group, Natty suggested the Western District, which was cheaper due to the high crime rate. Even so, Suzuki said he was looking for properties that cost around 1 gold coin, and with that in mind, Natty presented some alternatives. The first property was somewhat acceptable, but the former resident had already been murdered by criminals. The second was right next to a brothel, while the third had a bandit's hideout beneath it. Since none of them appealed to Suzuki, Natty said she would return to the office to check if there was any alternative that might fit. While waiting, Suzuki asked Xena if she wanted to go somewhere. Hearing this, Natty suggested the two visit the recently opened flea market. She even whispered to Xena, saying it was the kind of place couples went together. But on the way there, they ended up running into some of the girls from the group, who had already finished shopping and were carrying things back to the lodging. The girls looked very pretty in their new clothes, and Eris had even changed her hair color, avoiding purple because she believed that shade would fade too quickly. Later, Suzuki had to take everyone to the flea market, and he apologized to Xena for having made decisions without asking her opinion first. But she said it was fine, and wanting to please her, Suzuki bought a pair of earrings as a gift. At that moment, Eris butted in, saying she wanted something too. It was then that Suzuki promised each one of them would be allowed to pick a gift of their own. Afterwards, the group went to an outdoor stage to watch a theater play. The genre was romance, which didn't really interest the younger ones, and even Lisa seemed more focused on the food stalls around than on the performance itself. The story was inspired by real events. It told of a sorcerer who had died, named Zen, and a princess called Liu Tiana, with whom he shared a true love. But the count, driven by envy, ordered the entire family of the sorcerer Zen to be eliminated, and even forced the princess's own servant to kill Zen himself. Desperate, the princess took her own life, determined to reunite with the one she loved. Everyone thought the drama would end there, but there was a big twist. The sorcerer's body, thrown into the abyss, came back to life as an undead knight, and destroyed all of the count's henchmen. However, before he could finish off the count, a holy knight appeared and defeated the sorcerer. After that, the count went through a drastic change of heart and became a good man. Suzuki said it was a play with a very anticlimactic and somewhat nonsensical ending. When going to the restroom, Suzuki found a handkerchief, and upon returning it to its owner, he asked her what she thought of the play. According to her, the original script had Zen taking his revenge before dying, but it was altered due to pressure from the nobility. She also revealed that the true story was about a common girl in love with a young man, but she was kidnapped by the count and forced to marry him. After saying goodbye to the woman, Suzuki returned to the group and noticed that only Xena and Eris had really watched the play attentively. Even though they had different views on the plot, neither of them sympathized with the princess's actions. Eris believed the princess should have taken up a sword and gone after the count in revenge, while Xena disagreed, saying it was the princess's own fault for breaking off the engagement arranged by their families. Wanting to prove her point, Eris asked Xena what she would do if she had to choose between someone picked by her family or someone she truly loved. Xena was left speechless, clearly torn between duty and heart. Seeing her discomfort, Suzuki stepped in and asked Eris to apologize. To change the mood, he then suggested that the servants buy some skewers of food, saying he would cover the cost himself. Later, while walking through the city, they ran into the group led by Nana, who had just fought against giant ant pincers. They were badly wounded and exhausted, and according to them, they had seen a group of rat knights crossing the border earlier. They believed that had attracted the ants that attacked them. Xena quickly treated the injured, but soon everyone heard a scream. It came from Tama's group. They were trying to capture a giant ant. At that moment, Suzuki scanned the area for further dangers, and realized that a whole swarm of ants was approaching the city. He quickly ordered the girls to prepare for battle. Even though the number of enemies was large, they were only level 13, so the army could handle them alone without Suzuki's help. In fact, many of the enemies could not even break through the simplest protective barriers. Since Lulu was not very skilled in combat, Suzuki asked Arisa to take her to a safe place. Post and Tama were left responsible for guarding the inn, while Suzuki and Lisa went straight to the front, fighting alongside the military forces. As expected, the giant ants could not withstand Xena's group, and with the arrival of Suzuki and Lisa to reinforce, only a few insects managed to pass through the defense, but those that did were quickly struck down by the duo Post and Tama. Thanks to his tracking ability, Suzuki noticed that some of the creatures had invaded the house that also served as Natty's office. So he left Lisa at the front line and went to the brokerage to resolve the situation. As soon as he arrived, Suzuki used a war hammer to crush the ants that were still there. However, Natty was unable to climb the stairs, as they were covered with acid residue left by the ants, while Suzuki carried something that could be used to protect the steps. Her manager appeared and offered a hand. As a sign of gratitude, Natty kissed them both and then explained that the manager was actually the spirit of the forest and not an elf, as many people imagined. This misunderstanding came from long ago, since the time of the first heroes, who used to call all beings with long ears in that way. The mistake ended up becoming a habit passed down through generations. When leaving that place, Suzuki saw the soldiers throwing the remains of the monsters away. When Xena spotted him and ran in his direction, but tripped and fell clumsily on top of him. She seemed upset for having to interrupt their walk, and although she wanted to continue, they could not because of other obligations. Meanwhile, Suzuki noticed that Lisa was being pressured by a soldier who was trying to force her to sell the body of a monster. Suzuki quickly realized the man was trying to take advantage of loopholes in the rules for his own benefit. Without wasting time, Suzuki pulled out his license and demanded that the man fill out a trading receipt. The man tried to argue that it was nothing serious, so no receipt was needed. But Suzuki, being an experienced merchant, always did everything properly, even when dealing with divine entities. He insisted on keeping everything correct, and because of this attention to detail, Suzuki noticed that the recorded amount was wrong and demanded the adjustment to the correct value. The extra money was welcome, since when night came, they were able to prepare a great dinner, and even more food came thanks to the innkeeper, who wanted to thank Post and Tama for protecting the place during the invasion. During the feast, when Suzuki noticed Lulu still was not feeling well, he went out to buy her some medicine. On the way, he met two acquaintances he had once saved in the labyrinth. When he saw they were truly willing to repay him, Suzuki could not bring himself to refuse, and they ended up going to a tavern where several girls were serving the tables around. Later, when leaving the tavern, Suzuki saw an owl feather and immediately heard the sound of a fight coming from an alley. Without thinking twice, he rushed there and came face to face with several mysterious figures, immediately drawing his weapon to confront the enemies. Suzuki then realized that the one being pursued was the rat knight previously mentioned by Arisa's group. Even though he was gravely wounded, the knight asked Suzuki to prioritize the princess. Suzuki then brought them both to Natty's house, but upon arriving, he saw that both the manager and she were sleeping. He had no choice but to break the door, and with the noise, the two came down and saw Suzuki, who immediately apologized for entering in such a manner. He explained that he had only done it because he wanted to show someone known by the manager, but the manager denied knowing the knight. Suzuki then clarified that it was not the rat knight he wanted them to meet, but rather a small fairy named Mia, whom the manager did in fact know. He confirmed that her name was indeed Mia. The girl ended up waking due to the commotion, but upon seeing Suzuki, she praised his beauty before going back to sleep. At that moment, the condition of the old rat knight worsened, and Natty hurried to fetch a priest. Suzuki wanted to go with her, since he did not think it safe for her to leave alone at that hour. The next day, when Arisa discovered that he had gone to the Blue Tower, she was furious, complaining that even though he had a young and beautiful girl at home, he was not taking advantage of it. And worse, his body carried a strong smell of animal fur. Suzuki explained that on the previous night he had gone out to look for medicine for Lulu, and on the way he ended up saving the beastman who was dying. When she heard this, Arisa became extremely jealous, wanting to know if it was a man or a woman. Even after Suzuki said it was a man, she still suggested that maybe he preferred to fight with swords and that he never touched her. But then Lulu woke up because of the argument, and Suzuki took the chance to tell her to focus on her health, handing her the bag with the medicine. After getting ready, he went to meet Natty, who told him that the rat was no longer in danger of dying, and Mia was also no longer injured, only extremely tired. According to the manager, Mia had been showing signs of mana exhaustion for a long time, and when Suzuki used his analysis ability, he confirmed that she had neither disease nor curse. So, even if slowly, her mana was restoring. Natty commented that a mana potion could accelerate the recovery, but it was very expensive. The other option would be to take Mia to those places with high mana concentration, such as springs or ley lines. The problem was that the only two places like that were inside the Count's castle, or in the Dragon's Valley. Since the second location had already been taken, Suzuki was unsure if it was still worth going there. But even before deciding, a noise coming from upstairs caught his attention. Knowing that Mia had already woken up, he asked Natty to go up and see how she was. As soon as Mia saw Suzuki, she commented that he was a spirit user. Up until then, he had never seen a spirit in his life, and according to Natty, only those with spiritual vision could perceive such beings. After explaining this, she asked Suzuki to stay there with Mia while she went down to prepare the food. With the two alone in the room, he asked the girl what exactly those spirits were. Mia's answer surprised him. She said they were soft and shining things. Not knowing what to do, Suzuki tried to change the subject, asking her to say good morning in the Elven language. Because of this, later on he ended up learning the language and discovered that the spirits' lives spread across the ley lines, which serve as their source of energy. After spending a considerable amount of time away from the group, Suzuki decided to ask for permission to return. But noticing that Mia did not want him to leave, he promised that he would come back soon. When he returned to the lodging, Suzuki saw Arisa teaching reading to the beast children. He took the opportunity to see what they had learned. That was when he discovered that the cards with animal pictures they were using summarized everything into a single word. They only knew how to say meat. The children answered joyfully every time, so Arisa did not have the courage to correct them. Worried about their learning, Suzuki decided he would fix that later by talking directly to them. Shortly after, Martha suddenly appeared and told them to stop playing and go back to work, but was surprised to hear she had already finished everything. This was only possible because Tama and Post had helped the girl and managed to speed things up. At lunchtime, Suzuki told Mia about the Rat Knight, and when they learned it was a princess, the girls became very excited to meet her. Lulu also decided to go, since her health had improved considerably. As soon as they saw Mia, they were enchanted both by her presence and by the color of her hair, which made Suzuki more at ease about leaving her with the other children. However, it seemed that Mia could only communicate because of Suzuki's presence. Later, when he went down the stairs, Natty suddenly asked if he was really a merchant, since she thought it strange that he had no carriage like the others. In response, Suzuki invented that his horse had run after a shooting star. After that, Natty said she wanted to introduce him to someone who sold carriages, since a friend of the manager was about to retire and very much wanted to sell his, together with 2 horses. Suzuki liked the idea a lot but explained that he had no license to drive. It was then that Lulu mentioned she already had experience with horse-drawn carriages and offered to teach him. As soon as he heard this, Suzuki immediately asked Natty to introduce him to the owner of the carriage without even asking how much it cost. By coincidence, a carriage passed by the window at that very moment, and Suzuki used his appraisal ability to reduce the value. With that, he managed to suggest a fair price and even included a delivery in the deal. On the following day, Suzuki and the group went out for a camping trip outside the city walls. Thanks to Arisa's excellent organization, they set everything up very quickly. She even improvised old utensils like a kettle, and the group led by Tama became excited when they saw the water boiling. Suzuki explained that the sound meant the water was already hot, but Arisa thought that the explanation was too complicated for the children. So he summarized everything by saying that when water boils, it releases a white steam that lifts the kettle's lid, and it sounds similar to when someone blows strongly after eating. After they ate, while Suzuki was watching the children playing, he noticed 3 white dots approaching. They were the beast children he had helped before, and as a form of gratitude they brought several fruits. Even though he wanted to accept, he thought they needed those more than he did, so he took a large amount of meat and offered it to them, saying that his group would not be able to eat everything, and he wanted them to take it. On the next day, Natty brought the message to Suzuki. Arisa suggested that he could use it to take Mia back home. He agreed immediately, but said he first needed to speak with the manager. While waiting, Suzuki asked Lulu to teach him how to drive the carriage. During their conversation, he noticed she was very relaxed, especially when talking about Arisa, her sister, which made the atmosphere very light. That was when Suzuki realized that Arisa still had not told her sister that she possessed memories from a previous life. With Lulu's help, he managed to unlock the ability to use carriages, and with only a few turns, he already evolved that ability to its maximum level. After traveling for quite some time, Lulu eventually became tired. Without warning, Suzuki noticed something strange approaching ahead. As soon as he returned to the inn, Suzuki saw that the children were also there. Because of a mana potion that the manager had brought, Mia could finally leave the house. And to celebrate the princess's improvement, Arisa suggested organizing a celebration. Of course, Suzuki accepted right away, since he did not want to disappoint the children. He asked Lisa and Lulu to go look for supplies for the party, but ended up once again seeing that black owl cat staring at him. When entering Natty's house, she told him that Mr. Rat had awakened, and upon reuniting with his savior, Mr. Rat expressed his gratitude and revealed his name was Missy. He shared everything that had happened with Mia, and according to him, Mia had been kidnapped by a witch and taken to a place called the Grotto. After escaping, she encountered Missy's group, who tried to bring her to the city manager. He also stated that the flying ants' attack on the city was also the work of the same witch. Suzuki felt that the manager knew the reason behind everything but preferred to keep it secret, so Suzuki chose not to press. At that moment, Suzuki heard the girls' screams from downstairs, and he and Manager Bolanin ran down quickly to discover what had happened to them. They realized that they had only been scared by the thunder, and at that moment Tama noticed the black owl cat inside the building. Immediately afterwards, the body of the creature appeared, a hooded figure by the pool. Soon after, the man used psychic magic to try to control everyone there. However, Arisa was not affected, since she had mastery over that type of magic. Suzuki also managed to free himself from the spell thanks to the skills implanted in him after being influenced by Arisa. By using his analysis abilities, Suzuki identified that the enemy was called Zen, which reminded him of the main character of a play. When he realized the man wanted to take Mia, Suzuki introduced himself, even while saying he was only a merchant. Zen declared himself a descendant of a hero. He said he had no intention of harming anyone. He only wanted Suzuki to hand Mia over, but Suzuki immediately refused, since she was a valuable friend to him. After being rejected, Zen launched his attack, trying to take advantage, but failed, and even managed to restrain Suzuki with the use of shadows. When she saw her master in that situation, Arisa cast a spell on him. The sorcerer, a lower undead, counterattacked, but Suzuki intercepted it. The manager also joined the fight, giving Suzuki a chance to escape from Zen's shadow whip. Even so, the difference in strength between them was remarkable. Not wanting to involve others in danger, Mia offered to stay behind, but Arisa was outraged by the idea and even began preparing a spell directly. Noticing this, Suzuki decided to start a conversation with Zen to distract him, even though he already knew who he was. He pretended not to know only to gain time. When everything was ready, Arisa warned Suzuki to move away and let her cast her spell against Zen. But even using her most powerful technique, her spell had no effect at all. And when Zen saw Arisa's purple hair, he realized that she was a reincarnated one. He then warned Suzuki to tell her to control the use of that ability, or she would end up becoming a plaything for the gods. After this, he grabbed Mia and used his Shadow Whip to push Suzuki back, issuing a challenge for him to go to a place called Best, in case he was not afraid of death. At that very moment, Lisa's group appeared. Suzuki asked them to take care of the others while he went after Zen. He also promised that he would bring Mia back safely. After crossing the gate, Suzuki found himself trapped in a twisted space. There, his strength and resistance gradually weakened, and even his map scanning ability did not work. Reflecting for a moment, Suzuki realized that place strongly resembled a game, and by using his experience as a programmer, he managed to find a way to bypass the system. Right afterwards, he came across a scene similar to a sacred temple, where Mia was being treated well. At that moment, Zen suddenly appeared, shocked to see Suzuki there. He accused him of having cheated, saying that only those who conquered the cradle could reach that room. This made Suzuki trust that Zen was the administrator of that place. But Zen made it clear that this was not a game, but a trial. The heroes who wanted to reach that space first had to conquer it, and only then would they have the right to challenge the immortal king who was himself. Hearing all this, Suzuki did not care in the slightest about that nonsense. What he truly wanted was to save Mia, but before he could act, he was expelled from the king's chamber by the maid. Zen's plan was to force Suzuki to overcome all of the cradle's tests again from the beginning. And now that his map scanning ability worked again, Suzuki realized that the place was beside Count Rei's territory, an area rich in mana, so he knew that Mia was not inside an illusion. But even so, he could not leave empty-handed. For that reason, he decided to advance toward the tree in order to rescue the girl. As soon as he passed through the door, Suzuki faced some enemies, but they were weak creatures that gave him no trouble. With the help of an identification ability, Suzuki discovered that the cradle had 200 floors in total, divided in sets of 10. Every 20 floors, there was a spiral staircase that led even higher. One thing Suzuki needed to understand was that the further he advanced through the levels, the more dangerous the enemies would become. Continuing forward, Suzuki noticed someone sleeping behind a pile of leaves, and when this figure awoke, he saw that it was a dryad. Imagining that by defeating her, he could advance to the next level, Suzuki prepared to face her. But since she had no mana at that moment, he decided to postpone the confrontation. As she observed him for a few moments, the dryad noticed that Suzuki was quite attractive. Because of this, she invited him to belong to her and also mentioned that she was hungry, asking for something to eat. At first, he thought about offering rations, but the dryad refused, since what she really needed was magical energy. With no other choice, he allowed her to absorb mana with a kiss. Receiving a great dose of mana from that charming young man, the dryad became satisfied. Soon after, she opened a passage so Suzuki could continue exploring the higher levels. Further ahead, he came across a ruined laboratory and found a diary that had belonged to Balanan. It stated that his tribe of elves had a weak connection with life and very limited emotional resistance, which resulted in many young elves dying inside the labyrinths. This place called the Cradle had been created to develop the elves' survival instinct and determination in times of crisis. However, no one had been able to complete it for more than 100 years, and the one responsible for creating the Cradle admitted he had made a mistake and decided to seal it until the elves needed it again. By the name, Suzuki concluded that Balanan was related to Mia and to the administrator. With this, he suspected that perhaps that place needed Mia for that very reason. After leaving, Suzuki asked the dryad how he could continue climbing. She answered cheerfully, guiding him to stand in the middle of some mushrooms, but that he had to specify which floor he wanted to reach. When the young man explained that he wanted to reach the main chamber of the cradle, the dryad told him that it would be impossible, since she could only take him up to the 100th floor. That floor was guarded by incredibly powerful defense knights, and she warned him to redouble his caution. When he arrived at the 100th floor, Suzuki came across 3 girls who looked very much alike. Beside them stood an imposing golem. Since he was not properly prepared, the girls asked him to stop attacking and to go look for adequate equipment before being received by them. According to the rules they explained, Suzuki could proceed if he defeated the group of guardians of that chamber, and in addition he would earn a reward if he won. Right after explaining this, the central girl gave the command for the level 30 iron golem to attack. At that moment, he noticed a word, Emet, marked on the golem's forehead. Suzuki aimed at the letter and eliminated the enemy, since Met meant death. The girls, who had been previously programmed, reacted with surprise, but in a very robotic way. Realizing they had no chance, they decided to retreat. Number 7 among them chose to buy time so the other 2 could escape. After a group offensive, numbers 5 and 6 withdrew, leaving number 7 alone. Even so, Suzuki defeated her with a single punch. Showing consideration, he arranged a place for number 7 to rest, and then he began exploring that floor's area. There he found several valuable weapons and potions, but decided to take only what was essential. Moving forward, Suzuki encountered another dryad lying on the ground, apparently withered. Thinking she was dead, he bent down to help. But suddenly she woke up, grabbed the water container, and asked him to let her extract mana as he had done with the other one. After receiving a good amount of energy, she recovered and explained that all dryads were connected. That's how she knew what had happened on the lower floors. Suzuki then asked how far she could take him, but she said that since she had lost contact with the higher levels, she could only lead him up to the 180th floor. When they arrived, Suzuki saw that insects had cut the vines linking the floors. Before she even finished speaking, the insects suddenly appeared. Despite their numbers, they did not represent a real threat, and Zen was astonished at how quickly Suzuki cleared the cradle. But Zen made it clear that Suzuki's sole purpose should be to allow the threat to be released in peace. However, to Zen, he still wasn't ready to face it directly. Before that, he would have to confront his subordinates and prove himself worthy of the title of hero. Only then would Zen hand him a legendary sacred sword. Zen also commented that if Suzuki entrusted the kingdom to any monarch, he would receive unparalleled glory. After saying this, he summoned everyone to fight against him. Seeing that there were new members among them, except for one he had already defeated before Suzuki was surprised. Zen had not only strengthened his army, but had also improved Suzuki himself. Before Suzuki could ask why, Zen ascended a little higher to watch the battle from afar. As soon as Zen left, his subordinates charged at Suzuki. To defeat the golems, Suzuki grabbed a spear and immediately learned to evolve it to the maximum in order to pierce through his enemy. As for the robotic girls, Suzuki used his martial arts skills to defeat them. But no matter how many times he knocked them down, they always got back up, which left him confused. He then asked why they sacrificed themselves for someone who saw them only as tools. In response, they all said unanimously that this was their will. Even exhausted, they kept fighting with everything they had against Suzuki, until finally they ran out of strength. Before fainting, the last robot begged him to help her master fulfill his wish. The way Suzuki acted impressed Zen, who honored his earlier promise and handed over the sacred sword as a reward. Suzuki then wanted to know what the witch's true wish was. The answer he received was that she sought a hero strong enough to end her life. In her previous existence, she had been the victim of cruel injustice that led to her death. The Lord then reincarnated her as a newborn baby, and she grew up surrounded by honorable parents and loyal friends, believing she could live a happy life this time. But everything collapsed when, one day, a nobleman took his wife by force and, based on lies, had her executed along with her entire family. Because of a divine blessing, he returned to life. Driven by vengeance, he turned his dead relatives into undead creatures. After completing his revenge, he began searching for a way to die, longing to reunite with his wife and son. However, the blessing he had received would not allow it. Thus, he ended up becoming the undying Dark King. And now that Suzuki had appeared as the awaited hero, he begged to be freed. Before becoming the true Demon Lord, Suzuki saw no reason to refuse and granted his last wish, using the sacred sword he carried. Before disappearing completely, the Dark King thanked Suzuki deeply, showing his happiness at finally being able to reunite with his loved ones. As Zen vanished entirely, Suzuki heard strange voices echoing around him. They said that although he had won this time, next time things would be different. As soon as the voices faded, the system informed him that the cradle had begun self-destruction. Without wasting time, Suzuki rushed to where Mia was, trying to wake her up. He asked Mia if she knew of a way to stop the collapse of the place. Since Mia had no idea how to halt the process, Suzuki had to handle everything himself. He eventually realized that Zen had never intended to harm Mia. In fact, he had left behind an escape route planned for her. So, he gathered the nearby robot guardians and instructed Mia to flee, telling her he still had to rescue someone else. With Mia out of danger, Suzuki leapt directly to the 180th floor and used an opening created during a battle to descend to the 100th. There, he found number 7 and quickly carried her to the Dryad, asking for the tree's help. The Dryad demanded both seeds and energy. The seeds were easily obtained thanks to the fruits given by the Beastman children, but as for energy, she warned that the amount required would be 3 times greater than before. Since Suzuki had already fully recovered his mana, he accepted immediately. The Dryad began absorbing his energy and connected with the tree outside the cradle, allowing Suzuki's group to escape successfully. She also warned him to hurry, as the cradle was collapsing and transforming into a salt sea. Even so, Suzuki insisted that she also escape, but she refused, explaining that as long as the forest existed, she too would remain alive. Afterward, Suzuki mastered every ability that could help him run and move quickly across the landscape. Still, it wasn't enough to escape in time. While running, he saw a lake and remembered the kettle's logic. He cast fireballs into the water, making it splash and form walls, which slowed the spread of the salt sea. That gave him enough time to escape the danger zone and reach safety. When the sun rose, Yuya and Suzuki's slaves were relieved to see him alive. Even Lisa, normally so strong, wept with emotion. Looking at Arisa, Suzuki recalled Zen's warning that if he used the power granted by the Lord, he would face the same tragic fate. Not long after, Balanan and Mia came to meet Suzuki. Mia was overjoyed that he had kept his promise to return safely, and to show her gratitude, the elven princess kissed him. Later, the robot guardians awakened, and all the girls deeply thanked Suzuki for helping their master fulfill his final wish. As repayment, they pledged their loyalty to him from that moment on. However, before joining Suzuki on his next journey, they first needed to bring Zen's ring to his wife's grave. Not all of them would go, one would remain with Suzuki, so they decided it with a game of rock, paper, scissors. The loser was number 7, who was chosen to stay behind. From then on, Suzuki began calling her Nana for simplicity. After everything was settled, the rat and the 7 guardians bid farewell to the group and went their own way. When Suzuki returned to the city, he explained that his disappearance had been caused by a confrontation with a mysterious soul summoner, and that with the help of his swordsman, he managed to return safely. Sena came running to him, deeply worried since she had been waiting for him the entire time he was gone. Seeing how distressed she was, Suzuki comforted her with kind words and even gave her a pair of earrings he had bought at the flea market. Soon after, Suzuki told Sena that he planned to leave for the elven village. She looked shaken, fearing he would never come back, but calmed down when she heard his firm promise that he would return with just a snap of his fingers. The very next morning, Suzuki's group set out toward the elven village. Before leaving the city behind, they made sure to thank the people who had supported them all this time. Shortly after crossing the gates, Suzuki saw Sena riding toward him on horseback. They spoke privately in the forest. Sena explained that she couldn't accompany him yet, but once spring came, her younger brother would come of age and assume the role of family head. From then on, she would be free, and she hoped Suzuki would let her travel with him. Seeing Suzuki's downcast expression after their farewell, Arisa tried to cheer him up, reminding him that he still had her and the spirits around him. Her words brought some relief to his heart, making him realize the importance of cherishing what he already had by his side. After a long time walking, the group decided to stop for lunch. The meals prepared by Lulu, Lisa, and Nana were excellent, drawing praise from Suzuki during the meal. However, he noticed Mia making demands about her food, which earned her a mild scolding. However, as Lisa explained, elves did not consume meat. After everyone had eaten very well, Lisa prepared some small dishes to take on the journey, and Arisa quickly offered to store everything inside the item box. She mentioned that using this kind of storage consumed a great amount of mana, since every time an object was placed inside or removed, it drained energy. This was very different from Suzuki's ability, which allowed him to do the same thing without spending anything at all. Even so, he still did not fully understand the true nature of his storage ability, but since he had already grown accustomed to the world he was living in, he said he could explore that in more detail later on. Once everyone had rested sufficiently, Suzuki decided it was time to resume the walk. But before that, he gave instructions so that everyone would organize their belongings. Seeing Mia recovering well after having been kidnapped by Zen brought him great happiness at that moment. Then Arisa approached to ask him to repair the straw mattress, since sitting on it was uncomfortable because of the pieces of straw sticking out. Suzuki agreed and asked them to bring all the mattresses so he could fix them properly. He even used a kind of material made from red earth, similar to goatskin, to create new covers, which ended up leaving Arisa quite surprised. She even joked, saying that he only wanted to guarantee comfort for her hips for possible intimate moments in the future. The girls were impressed with Suzuki's sewing skills, although it did not help much since he had forgotten to tie the knot at the end of the thread. Even after fixing everything, he decided to create a plush blanket shaped like a bat. Nana found the creation so adorable that she asked if she could keep it, but so as not to be unfair, Suzuki made one for each member of the group, and the journey continued. Later, the group made another stop to rest, since everyone was exhausted. When Lisa said it was time to move on, Suzuki preferred to stay a little longer to entertain Pachai and Tama. He gave up exploring some interesting stones nearby, while Arisa decided to accompany the two girls on their small adventure. Meanwhile, from a tree, Nana observed carefully as Mia played a flute made of leaves. The melody was so touching that Suzuki went over to praise her. Seeing her master's interest, Nana asked Mia to teach her, but Suzuki had to remind her that Mia did not enjoy being called princess. Soon afterward, Lisa and Lulu also joined the group, and all of them demonstrated some talent except for Suzuki, who seemed to have no ability at all. Even trying to improve his skill there, his performance on the flute was so poor that Arisa could not even believe what she was hearing. Ignoring this, she suggested going to a certain place. To Suzuki's surprise, what appeared before them were Torii gates. For some reason, he immediately felt that he knew that place. Suddenly, a memory overwhelmed his mind. A girl from that memory told him that they would always be together, regardless of time or world, and that he would always be her Kairo. Suzuki also remembered that the Temple of Remembrance was located behind his grandfather's house, but he did not know whether the girl in the memory was the same one he had once met. She had said that the difference in life expectancy between gods and humans required divine intervention so that the two of them could remain together. Suzuki was then awakened from his trance when Arisa called out to him. He checked his status but saw no sign of a mental attack. After that, he recalled having created a game based on that same temple, but he could not remember ever having such a conversation in real life. This made him think that perhaps it had been something that came from a game, or something similar. Looking more carefully, Suzuki remembered that the portal was in fact a travel portal, but one that was completely broken and without use. When he returned, Pachai came running in full excitement, eager to show him the items she had found. Meanwhile, Lulu, wanting to learn how to cut meat, followed Lisa to receive instructions. Seeing Pachai all dirty in the mud, Suzuki asked Mia if she knew any magic similar to washing with light of life. Mia answered that she did not know any such spell. At that moment, Tama noticed the fire arrow wolf that Pachai had captured, which, incidentally, was very cute. Arisa immediately became excited and wanted to hold the little creature in her arms. But since it was a magical being, Suzuki warned her to be careful. However, because Arisa did not hold it firmly, the creature escaped quickly, leaving Tama quite upset. Arisa apologized, and Tama said it was all right, although she was still a little sad. Wanting to comfort her, Suzuki said that the most important thing was that she was safe and that there would be other chances in the future. Just then, Pachai's stomach began to growl from the effort of the hunt. When they heard this, Arisa pulled food from the item box to feed everyone. Even though it was cold, the children ate with delight, and after the snack, the group resumed their path. During a pause, Suzuki decided to take a look at his inventory. He ended up finding a grimoire of illusions that had been automatically added after his last achievement. With the book in hand, Suzuki noticed that the way magic functioned in that world reminded him strongly of programming languages. It was as if the one who had created the magical system was someone who truly understood code. With this understanding, he realized that the magic of life was much more complicated, since it worked differently from the elementary spells. So instead of copying it directly, he analyzed what was needed to use that type of magic. He ended up reusing portions of water spells and then created a new formula. While he was completely focused on this, he felt something soft touching him, and when he opened the interface system, he realized his hand was on Nana's chest. Arisa and Mia immediately scolded him, accusing him of being indecent, but in truth, it was Nana herself who had placed his hand there. It was then that Suzuki saw several white markers appearing on the map, indicating Ratman. At once, he remembered the elder Rat Mize, who had told him to search for some missing friends who had been protecting Mia. Because of that, Suzuki asked the group to stop the wagon, and he went to negotiate with the driver of a horse-drawn carriage in order to free the ratfolk. As soon as they reunited with Princess Mia, the Ratman ran to embrace her and thanked Suzuki for saving her and the others. The knights, however, being in a hurry, quickly said their farewells and continued on their way. Later, wanting to replenish the life supply, Suzuki took Tama with him on a hunt. He had chosen her specifically because he wanted to lift the girls' spirits after what had happened with the wolf. At the end of the hunt, the girls were all covered in mud, so Suzuki asked Mia to test a new spell he had developed. It was an adaptation of water magic that created cleansing bubbles, and it worked. All the dirt was washed away. During the night, while the girls slept, Suzuki stayed on watch and used the time to test the storage system. He discovered that the maximum range to retrieve an item was about 3 meters, within which the system could even separate mixed components. It only failed with dissolved liquids, such as salt water. He also tried to use storage to open insect bodies, hoping to save Lisa the work during dissection tasks. Even with several attempts, he could not succeed. Still, he realized that the system was superior to Arisa's item box. To prove it, he ran an experiment. He placed 2 burning papers, one inside storage and the other in the item box. When removed from the item box, the paper had been extinguished, but the one in storage was still burning. The next morning, Suzuki prepared a hearty breakfast for his companions, everything cooked the night before and kept warm in his inventory. After that, the group resumed the journey, and a few hours later they encountered the elder Rat Mize together with the others. Together, they built a tomb for the warriors who had given their lives to protect Mia. Deeply moved, Mia went to the tomb and sang a prayer to honor the souls of those brave warriors. As a token of gratitude, the elder Rat Mize presented Suzuki with the Bell of Silence, recognizing that he had earned the trust of Princess Mia. After a long journey, Suzuki made a stop in a city and decided to relax with some drinks. Besides giving a generous tip to the waitress, he even paid the bill for everyone at the table in order to put an end to arguments and make everyone enjoy the moment. When he was about to leave, the waitress called him upstairs. It turned out the place also functioned as an inn, and she wished to offer him a special service. The next day, Mia and Arisa accused Suzuki of being unfaithful, and since he could not explain the situation clearly, he ended up being surprised by a scene where a man was threatening a couple. Suzuki found the man's expression suspicious, and Lisa explained that the fellow had forced the couple to sell the core of a monster. Suzuki approached the couple and gave them a healing potion, helping the husband recover from a broken leg. Arisa then asked whether that was a good idea, since they might need the potion later. Thinking of that, Suzuki used the rest time to learn alchemy. With the formula in hand, he quickly learned how to make a potion. However, if not stored in its proper vial, the potion would deteriorate. When he examined the content, he noticed that at the bottom of the flask, there was a special magical ring. Since ingredients were running out, he decided to visit a nearby city the following day. But that night, Suzuki spent hours creating a magical item, and since Arisa grew curious, he let her test it. At first, she became very excited, but she soon realized that the object only made mana circulate endlessly without any purpose, which left her quite frustrated. When it was Suzuki's turn to try, the magical item ended up absorbing far too much mana and exploded, startling the girls who were still awake. They immediately thought they were under attack, while Suzuki himself ended up gaining new titles such as Personification of Destruction. The next day, they made a stop in a city called Loki. There, Suzuki and Lisa looked for someone who could point them toward an alchemy shop. As soon as they arrived, a man appeared at the entrance and confronted Suzuki, saying they were blocking the passage. He even seemed ready to attack, but when he got a proper look at Suzuki's face, he quickly changed his mind, summoned his henchmen, and left. After entering the place and meeting the shop owner, Suzuki asked about what was for sale, since he wanted ingredients for potion crafting. Because of the shortage of monsters, the price per vial had been fixed at 1 silver coin. Coincidentally, Suzuki had several monster cores stored away. However, selling such items without official authorization was illegal, so he decided to put that matter aside for now. Suzuki then asked about items such as stabilizers and magic scrolls. Although there were plenty available, he could only acquire them by exchanging at least one level 3 monster core. In the end, he still wanted to buy some potion vials, but the owner explained that the man Suzuki had seen outside had already purchased all of them. That man also carried an official license approved by the city hall, so the shopkeeper had no choice but to comply. Instead, he suggested that Suzuki visit a pottery shop. After leaving the alchemy shop, Suzuki asked Lisa to go ahead and prepare dinner while he visited several pottery stores in search of potion vials. Unfortunately, none of them had any stock left. As night fell, Suzuki changed his appearance and returned to the alchemy shop, exchanging monster cores through a discreet broker. Even though such practice was illegal, the shop's proprietress was cautious about what she sold and refused to provide dangerous magic scrolls to strangers. In the end, Suzuki was only able to purchase simple scrolls such as shields and seals. Later, he used those scrolls to acquire new abilities and to explore areas that the map could not reveal. Venturing a little deeper into the forest, Suzuki realized that he had crossed a magical barrier. Using his appraisal skill, he discovered that the barrier's purpose was to confuse anyone who passed through it. At that moment, a dark portion of the map was revealed, and he noticed several white markers approaching. Since Suzuki had trespassed into their territory, it was only natural that the witches would want to drive him away. He even tried to retreat, but it was already too late. The forest's defense squad had arrived. The leader of this group was a very young girl. Suzuki tried to explain that he had entered unintentionally, but when she realized that her spells had no effect on him, the girl summoned her master. Immediately after, a giant bird landed, and from its back descended an elderly woman. She knelt and introduced herself as the guardian witch of the forest's mana spring. She took the opportunity to apologize for her disciple's rude behavior. During their conversation, Suzuki discovered that she had mistaken him for an emissary of Bonin because of a bell he carried. Suzuki explained that he was simply accompanying an elf from the same clan. At that moment, Inanamana, the witch's apprentice, appeared and also bowed deeply to apologize. Suzuki responded by telling her she could raise her head, since he also shared part of the blame for the misunderstanding. Shortly after, the witch and her disciple began preparing healing potions as part of the alliance they maintain. It was then that Suzuki learned, through the witch, that they had an arrangement with Count Kohanoa. In exchange for protection against hunters and criminals, they were required to deliver 300 potions twice a year. Noticing Suzuki's interest in potion making, the old witch was delighted to share her special recipe with him, as long as he agreed to help with a mission. Later, she created a path of light to guide him to the forest's exit. The mission involved delivering a letter to a giant who lived within the forest. The following morning, already at the tavern, Suzuki overheard two men talking about how the witches seemed to be succeeding in producing all the potions for that cycle, and how this was creating tension among certain groups. At that very moment, the craftsman who produced the potion vials, the same ones Suzuki had been searching for, appeared. The idea was that Suzuki could learn how to manufacture the vials himself. However, due to city regulations, the craftsman was forbidden to teach anyone. The only alternative would be for Suzuki to officially register as a pottery apprentice, thereby circumventing the legal restrictions. And so, Suzuki continued listening carefully to the two men, and he ended up discovering that the white-haired man had plans to become the new lord of the city instead of being the leader of the people. At that moment, Eris and two other girls appeared out of nowhere, calling Suzuki to come back since it was already past bedtime. And on the following day, when Suzuki was taking the group of girls to the pottery workshop, he noticed that Ninmana was being chased by a suspicious group. She was completely desperate and afraid that her potions would be destroyed. Fortunately, Suzuki's group showed up in time and managed to save her from her pursuers. But right after that, an ambush happened behind the gate, and the carriage collided with the attackers. With the commotion, several potion bottles that were supposed to be delivered to the Hound ended up breaking, and only 120 bottles remained in good condition. Among the broken bottles, there were still some usable potions, so Suzuki collected what he could using his storage. In total, he managed to recover about 10 milliliters of potions, enough to pack everything into 40 new bottles. Soon after, the group went to the district chief to deliver the flasks of medicine in taquios. However, the man was unyielding and even used his own treaty as justification to further explain the situation. His voice sounded familiar, but Suzuki could not remember where he had heard it before. Later, Suzuki tried to make a negotiation by suggesting completing the delivery using bottles bought at the market. Even so, the district chief refused once again, saying he would only accept bottles prepared exclusively by witches. Since Suzuki had never heard the witch Cyan saying such a thing, he quickly understood that the man was trying to sabotage the signing of the contract. Then he realized that it was the same man he had been talking with the day before. The man's true plan was to completely clear the illusory forest in order to raise a new city in its place. Faced with that, Suzuki questioned him, saying that such terms were not part of the agreement, and asked who had inserted those extra clauses in the contract. Nervous, the man asked how Suzuki knew so much about the details of the document. And sweating cold, he ended up admitting Suzuki's involvement with the Witch of the Forest and eventually agreed to accept bottles with the same quality as replacements. Of course, Suzuki was clever enough to ask for a written confirmation document to avoid further conflicts. Even though they managed to reach an agreement, time was short, and only 3 hours remained until the deadline. This made Annie lament, saying that it would be impossible to produce everything in time. That was when Lisa's group appeared, bringing a quantity of medicinal ingredients. Still, Annie Circumflex Nenimana stated that it would not help much, because besides producing the medicine, they also did not have enough bottles to store everything. At that moment, Suzuki understood why they had bought so many bottles, and why those two men had been so calm before when they mentioned they needed 180 in gross profits. The owner of the pottery workshop was shocked, but Suzuki did not want to involve him in problems. He only needed one favor, that he lend them the furnace. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, the potter agreed to help, even offering to participate in the production of the pieces. Suzuki distributed the tasks among everyone, encouraging the girls to join forces to handle the work. But the service was very complicated, since those who had never done ceramics before struggled with the strength of the spinning wheel. In the end, only Suzuki managed to shape them correctly thanks to his system skills. However, the greatest challenge came afterwards: the drying. Normally it would take 5 days due to the climate of the season, and if they placed the pieces in the furnace like that, they would explode. Knowing this, Suzuki acted to try to remove the humidity, and even with magic the bottles were still damp when he asked Mia to try anyway. Even so, they proceeded with molding the pieces, and once they had the right number and size, the potter placed everything in the furnace. While they waited for the bottles to be ready, everyone helped Annie Circumflex Nenimana to prepare the medicine. When they finished, they went to the furnace to check the situation, and the potter said that now it was only a matter of letting it cool down, and they could use the bottles by nightfall. But then a strange merchant appeared with some thugs, claiming that Suzuki's group was making containers without authorization. Using City Hall laws as an excuse, he ordered the furnace destroyed, which turned all the bottles into shards. As soon as the men left, Suzuki apologized to the owner of the furnace and borrowed the bird from Annie's house, since he wanted to get in touch with the witch. Shortly afterwards, Arisa noticed something in common among the broken fragments. Seeing that, Suzuki smiled and explained that he had left defective capsules to deceive his friends. As soon as he noticed the merchant's approach, he stored the real ones in the deposit and left only the fake ones. He picked one of them to show Arisa, and it broke instantly with the temperature change, proving they were fragile. The next mission now was to cool the bottles in a safe way, and that was when Suzuki remembered the item box where he had once placed a burning paper that extinguished the moment it was taken out of there. With this in mind, he decided to test it. He placed a flask inside the item box, and then took it out again. It worked perfectly, and the bottle had already cooled down completely. After that, the group went to the office of the white-haired man to obtain the confirmation signature. The suspicious merchant tried to question them, but fell silent when he heard the Count's men confirming everything. Even so, he kept insisting on knowing what trick Suzuki had used. Suzuki replied without hesitation, it was all the result of the collective effort of everyone. Immediately after, Suzuki asked the district chief to sign and stamp the documents, but the man refused to cooperate, clearly trying to buy time. At that moment, Count Kurano suddenly appeared and declared that he himself would sign the documents on Suzuki's behalf. His arrival happened because the witch had reported everything that the district chief was doing, which was also why Suzuki had sent the bird to her. Pressed by the count, the white-haired man grew aggressive and tried to cast a spell against him, but the magic had no effect, since Count Kurano was not someone ordinary because of his position. When the count was about to eliminate both men, Suzuki intervened and stopped him. The count questioned his reason, and Suzuki answered that there were children nearby. The count then sheathed his sword and commented that the witch truly had a valuable friend, before continuing on his way. Once more, Suzuki apologized to the owner of the pottery workshop and assured him that everything was fine now, since he had the authorization of the count to freely conduct business. As a way of gratitude, Ingi Circumflex Nenimana presented Suzuki with an enchanted lantern, and besides that, he was recognized with the title of Friend of the Witch, granted by the old witch herself. Soon after, the journey continued, and at dawn Suzuki awoke to see Nana sitting on top of him. When he touched her, Eris appeared and interrupted them. So Nana tried to avoid any suspicious situation, but in truth, Nana only wanted Suzuki to make some adjustments to the platform system. For that, he needed to place his hand close to her chest and channel Nana inside himself. That was when Mia appeared out of nowhere and suggested that he place his hand on Nana's back instead of her chest, since it was near the heart and without changing the effect. Even with Suzuki touching only Nana's back, she ended up making some rather strange sounds. This left Arisa extremely jealous and wanting to pull Nana away immediately. Whenever Xena received a letter from Suzuki, she proudly showed it to her colleagues and laughed while reading the contents alone. Returning to Suzuki's group, while they were having a meal together, Lisa and Arisa brought wild herbs that Post swore were edible, since they had a strong and pleasant aroma. Suzuki offered to try them first and found the taste surprisingly sweet. After confirming that it was safe to eat, he encouraged Post and Tama to try them as well. But instead of eating normally, the two of them licked the plant directly from his hands. Seeing that, Arisa handed a napkin to Suzuki, but also took the opportunity to try to lick his hand herself. However, he refused at that very moment. Later that same night, Post asked Suzuki to tell a story for everyone to hear. He began reading, but before he could finish the first part, 3 of the girls had already fallen asleep, which made him stop the reading. After that, everyone went up to the vehicle to rest, and on the following morning, Suzuki woke up surrounded by the girls. This made Arisa even more jealous, since it seemed like he was enjoying life with his harem while she was left aside. Soon after, the group woke up, had breakfast, and set out on their journey, thus ending our adventure. Our video ends here. I hope you all enjoyed it. Leave a like and comment below if you would like to have a harem like this. That is it for now. God bless you. Thank you, and see you in the next video.